Yo. Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there today, and hopefully you had yourself one mother banger of a week one for fantasy football, because we're going to do it again here in week two. And in today's show, we're talking about starts and sits for the running back position, a position which overall we did pretty good here in week one. Now, how did we do? Great question. Let's go over our accuracy ratings for just last week. Now, last week we talked about 58 running backs, all who which completed their games this past week. Out of those 58 running backs, we got 42 of their start-sit designations correct for an accuracy percentage of 72%. Some of our biggest hits: Damian Harris of the New England Patriots. Please, Bill, don't punish him for that fumble. Miles Sanders, finally the Philadelphia Eagles committed, and Miles Sanders put up some solid numbers. David Montgomery, bad matchup, who cares? Some of our biggest misses: DeAndre Swift, Detroit Lions. Now, it was a question mark all week long whether he was even going to start and play, right? Then he magically healed midweek and came out and really had one huge play that put him over the top. James Robinson, MIA. Somebody sent out an all-points bulletin for J-Rob because Urban Meyer must not be able to find him. And then, how about all? Let's include all the Houston running backs: David Johnson, Mark Ingram, and Phillip Lindsay, all finding the end zone against a great matchup for them in the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose defense looks absolutely horrendous at this point. But I will definitely take 72% here to start off the season. Now, before we get into all the content, though, and every matchup, every game, every player, I got to remind you of the huge giveaway we're doing here in September through our friends over at Prize Picks. We have a bundle giveaway: a Justin Jefferson autographed jersey, a Manscaped Perfect Package 4.0, and a Trevor Lawrence rookie card valued at over $250. And all you have to do in order to get into this giveaway is to go to prizepicks.com or download the app, create a new account, use the referral code Headliners, and make a minimum $20 deposit there on the app. Whatever deposit you make up to $100, Prize Picks is going to match it for you, so you automatically double your money right there. Plus, you get one entry into this giveaway, which we'll announce at the end of the month. We're going to be doing these types of things all year long with our friends over at Prize Picks. We're talking about these picks in our shows. We're helping people over on Discord and through Patreon, make some money here on Prize Picks, and it's a lot of fun to do so, and it's super, super easy. So head over there right now, create that new account, and use the referral code Headliners, link down below in the description. But now it is time for week number 2. Let's talk about the Thursday night football matchup between the New York Giants and the Washington football team. And how about this? The most truthful team leading up to week 1 of the regular season was actually the New York Giants. They said they were going to limit Saquon Barkley, said he wasn't 100%, said they were going to bring him along slow, and they did. Shout out to them. They are so unlike the Detroit Lions and DeAndre Swift. Anyway, moving forward, I'm worried about Saquon Barkley. He only got 12 touches and he only averaged 2.6 yards per carry. Heck, even Daniel Jones, their quarterback, had 6 carries for 27 yards and a touchdown, a better average than Saquon Barkley. Now he gets a matchup going up against the Washington football team, one of the best defensive fronts in all of the NFL. I'm heading over to Prize Picks and I'm smashing the under on Saquon Barkley this week for rushing yards. It's set at 52.5 yards, and I'm going the under with the limited work and the difficult matchup. I mean, just last week, the football team only allowed 90 total rushing yards to the Los Angeles Chargers, and there's no way that Saquon Barkley catapults from a limited basis to a full workload, especially in a short week where they play on Thursday night. He's going to be limited here, once again, going to be very, very touchdown dependent. Now, I can see your reaction out there when you're looking at the screen. Your eyes are probably all big because it says sit Saquon Barkley. And 100% I would do that, but it depends on your options. I'm not sitting Saquon Barkley for Samaje Perine, okay? There is going to be a limit. Maybe you can throw him down in your flex spot. We can get that availability of a wide receiver potentially in a good matchup. We just have to pay attention to options this week. It's not a locked in stone, we got to start him. I always say to start your studs when they're healthy, always. Saquon Barkley right now, doesn't categorize himself as healthy. He may be healthy, but he's not getting healthy workload just yet. So we're going to be super cautious here this week in a very, very difficult matchup. If you want to leave a comment down below, let me know what other options you have besides Saquon Barkley, and I'll try to answer as many of them as I can to see where we find that cutoff line. Like I said, you want to make sure you're still putting value in for him and not just throwing a name at a problem. What about for the Washington football team? Love seeing 24 touches for Antonio Gibson. Hate seeing one of them being a fumble. Is he in the doghouse a little bit? I don't think so. But how does this offense look now under Taylor Heineke? No more Fitzmagic, right? Rest in peace, Fitzmagic. I mean, hopefully he comes back. It's going to be mid-season at best before we see Ryan Fitzpatrick back in the mix. But Taylor Heineke is somebody who can move the ball down the field still. I'm hoping that they still continue to include Antonio Gibson just as much in the passing game as they said that they were going to, because we love seeing all those touches on a weekly basis. A matchup here going up against the New York Giants, who did allow 146 yards rushing just last week to the Denver Broncos. It's a big-time play for Antonio Gibson, right? He's capable of making those big plays, and that's why you got to have him. Volume, big play potential, touchdown upside, a backup quarterback who more likely could check down to him at times. Things are okay for Antonio Gibson. I'm not completely worried. Plus, the schedule continues to get easier and easier as the season progresses. I'm not looking to ship this guy off here anytime soon. That volume, very promising. Still going to start Antonio Gibson. All right, so now we'll move over to Sunday football. First matchup, Cincinnati Bengals, Chicago Bears, and how are we feeling out there about Joe Mixon? We enjoying those 33 touches he got in week 1? Because this is exactly what a good passing game does, right? It opens up running lanes, because we knew this offensive line isn't elite. But when you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd out there on the outside, it pulls defenders outside of the box and opens things up for Joe Mixon. It's why we've loved him here this offseason. Plus, now he's getting targets with no Gio Bernard in the mix. Now, Chicago was just picked apart by the Rams and Matthew Stafford, right? We saw them go deep ball down the field. We saw them getting chunk yards on the ground. Either way, can Cincinnati do the same? They got a great passing game, right? Can Joe Burrow get some big plays down the field, which help open things up for Joe Mixon once again? I think this is something we're going to see on a weekly basis. Now, is Joe Mixon going to go out there and get 33 touches a week? No, probably not. But based off of his efficiencies, if he can be in that ballpark of 20, he's an automatic start every single week. We start every running back who gets 20 touches a week regardless. And Joe Mixon, nothing changes this week, sitting in the start column once again for Chicago. This is a perfect reason why you don't sit your healthy studs, right? Did you sit David Montgomery because he was going up against the Rams? I hope not, because the guy went out there and played great. And more than anything, hopefully you got to watch some of his highlights, some of his clips. This dude just looks different. We mentioned it in the offseason. The patience, the vision, the agility, the ability to make quick decisions all happened here over the last year for David Montgomery, and now he's starting to really excel in the NFL. This was not a fluke. We saw it towards the end of last year. It's like it totally clicked, and it's continued to click here into 2021. Love some David Montgomery here once again this week. Got a little bit of an injury scare there. He went to the sideline at one time, looked like they were working on his finger, but then he came back in the game and continued to run hard. So I'm not too worried about that. In a great matchup going up against Cincinnati, an easier matchup for him here this week. 100% starting David Montgomery. Now, as for Damian Williams in the backfield, somebody to pay attention to, because it's obvious that they wanted to utilize him at times to really kind of see what he has. Is he going to take the job away? No, not as long as David Montgomery is healthy. However, if anything were to happen to David Montgomery, I think we know that Damian Williams is going to be the guy to really get that huge uptick in volume. So just keep that on your radar. But as of right now, starting David Montgomery. Texans and Browns are up next, and this is why you don't fade Nick Chubb. All the people this offseason saying, Chubb sucks, avoid Chubb. Chubb doesn't have a ceiling. Chubb can't be a league winner. Suck it, because he can. And we just saw why this past week. The guy has a nose for the end zone. We know he's going to get volume. It only took him 17 total touches to finish as running back 3 overall this week. And the offense overall in Cleveland didn't look half bad. Him and Kareem Hunt continue to coexist just fine. The high ceiling on a weekly basis is going to be Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt barely even touched the ball in the second half of that football game. I don't care what his final stat line was, because the majority of it, the entire game, still went to Nick Chubb. And now they get the Houston Texans? Perfect. I love this. Both Chubb and Hunt, automatic must starts for me here this week. A lot of people want to say, oh, I think a lot of people underestimated Houston. No, Houston was playing Jacksonville, and Jacksonville doesn't give two craps about anything right now because they looked absolutely horrendous. Urban Meyer, there's already reports coming out that his heart's not in it. These are just not good things that you want to hear after 1 week of the NFL season, so definitely want to take advantage of Nick Chubb here this week in a great matchup on the ground going up against the Houston Texans. What about for Houston, though? Holy headache, right? You had David Johnson, Mark Ingram, and Phillip Lindsay all find the end zone in week 1. You had Mark Ingram leading the game in touches with 26 there on the ground for the Houston Texans. Does that mean that he's a must start every week? No, because they're not playing Jacksonville every single week. Remember, they got up to a 27-7 lead there, I believe, at halftime, and they just continued to pound the rock to try to hold that lead. That was their game plan. Can they do that against Cleveland? I don't think so. Cleveland almost upset Kansas City. I mean, they were making Kansas City backpedal there for a little bit. That defense is no joke in Cleveland, and I'm not expecting the same level of production here out of these running backs here this week. However, what this did show you is that on a week-by-week basis, who scores the touchdown? Because whoever scores the touchdown in this backfield is going to be the more fantasy relevant guy. How are we going to figure out who that is on a weekly basis? Now, I want to say that this is a Mark Ingram backfield. And if I had to choose one on a weekly basis, it would be Mark Ingram. However, there's no guarantee of that. Like I said, all three of them are being used at times. Just a big headache. And until we get more clarity in this backfield of maybe we go out there and we see Mark Ingram get 20 plus touches again this week and find the end zone once again. Okay, now we have some trending data here that we can use going forward that this is Mark Ingram's backfield. But until we see that, it's going to be really hard to trust anybody in this offense. And here's why. None of them were efficient, right? All of them only averaged 3.2 yards per carry. I'm sorry, but if you're a back averaging under 4 yards per carry, I have a hard time trusting you on a weekly basis when there's other options in the backfield that could take away some of your touches. That 3.2 yards per carry tells me that you need volume to be productive. Until I know who's for sure going to get that volume, it's a huge question mark, and until I figure that out, I got to continue to fade this backfield, especially in a more difficult matchup this week against the Cleveland Browns. Rams and Colts, and how scary good could the Rams be here in 2021? An improved offensive line, an improved quarterback play. Matthew Stafford out there looking like an MVP candidate after 1 week. Plus, Darrell Henderson, the clear number one in this backfield. Sony Michel, only one touch late in the game, really not a factor, right? This is the backfield of Darrell Henderson as of right now, and he looked pretty good against Chicago. 87 yards total and a touchdown. I'll take that on a weekly basis for somebody that you may have drafted in the 4th or 5th round or so in your drafts here this season. However, difficult matchup going up against Indianapolis, a scary defensive front, right? But this team just allowed 140 rushing yards to the Seattle Seahawks, including some chunk plays that we saw from Chris Carson. They are not impenetrable on the ground. And here's what's great. On a weekly basis, I'm not really too concerned about any matchup for the Rams, to be honest. With that passing game of Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, that's going to open up running lanes for days because Matthew Stafford will pick you apart in the secondary. If you leave wide receivers in single coverage anywhere on the field, they're going to have to drop defenders back more into the zone, going to open up some running lanes. Darrell Henderson going to be the main beneficiary. They're going to start him once again this week. As far as the Colts go, though, how awesome was it to see 8 targets go the way of Jonathan Taylor? I love seeing that on a weekly basis because that's going to boost his floor tremendously. It's going to help him be a safer start on a weekly basis, not somebody who we're really going to want to sit ever, right? But getting that amount of targets with a healthy Nyheim Hines says that they really want to get this guy involved on all 3 downs. But don't get me wrong, Nyheim Hines still going to be involved. He's going to be involved in this offense. We just saw it this past week. He had 10 targets himself. Carson Wentz is going to target his running backs a lot, especially with some banged up wide receivers there on the outside. Both of these guys, for me this week, could be a start going up against the Rams. Now, it's difficult, right? Because it's the Rams, and a lot of people have that mantra of, oh, it's the Rams, but we saw them be more vulnerable on the ground than through the air. Some of the reasons why David Montgomery found some success. We're going to continue to start Jonathan Taylor, obviously, but why I'll say I'll start Nyheim Hines, because more than likely, he's your flex, he's your double flex if you play in a multiple flex league, and he has that high reception upside to give him the safer floor. Is he an automatic smash must start? No. He's not, but he's somebody who, if you need, has that PPR upside to give him the safer floor where the ceiling may be somewhat capped because of Jonathan Taylor. But this week against the Rams, I'm not totally scared off. Bills and Dolphins now, and sup, Devin Singletary? It's good to see you. I mean, he must not have liked his nickname last year when we called him Damn It Devin all the time. But apparently this is his backfield going forward. And he didn't play half bad. 72 yards on 11 carries and 3 receptions, so not huge volume, but Zach Moss was a healthy scratch because it's Zach Moss. He's not that good. We've been trying to tell people that for a long time, but the volume just isn't going to be huge in this backfield. Josh Allen likes to throw the ball down the field, which we like as well. Plus, he's also going to call his own number and scramble at times throughout the season. So it's really going to limit whoever's upside is in this backfield. Seems like it's going to be Devin Singletary going forward. A tough matchup this week going up against the Miami Dolphins. However, they did just allow 125 rushing yards to the New England Patriots, and Damian Harris at times looked like a superhero against this defense. They're very vulnerable on the ground, not so much through the air. Can they utilize that this week for the Buffalo Bills? I don't want to say that Devin Singletary is a one-hit wonder out there being super efficient, but I got to see this for multiple weeks before I think about starting him in fantasy football. So he's still in the sit column. For Miami, it's still Myles Gaskin, right? Yeah, sure, Malcolm Brown is there, Salvin Ahmed is there, but this is the backfield of Myles Gaskin. This problem this past week is they just couldn't get him enough volume. 14 total touches. However, he had 5 targets and 5 receptions. I love that because that helps boost that floor up. So even though he didn't get huge volume, he didn't kill your fantasy team here this week. A matchup going up against the Bills is not ideal. It's not easy. However, with this backfield and now the addition of Will Fuller, it's going to help continue to pull defenders out of the box. They got to account for these guys further down the field. And Tua actually looked pretty good, right? If Tua can continue to demand that respect down the field, that'll only help Myles Gaskin. I love those check down passes. I'm going to start Gaskin here once again in week 2. Patriots and Jets, and I said here on this show last week how excited I was for the clarity in the backfield of the New England Patriots. With no Sony Michel, Cam Newton not under center, it looked like everything was being handed to Damian Harris, and I was pumped for it. We told everybody to start him last week, and then he came out and balled out and looked great, and then he fumbled. And then I started to panic because we know what happens to running backs in an offense run by Bill Belichick. He punishes people, and I hate that. I really, really hate that. The silver lining here is Ramondre Stevenson also fumbled. So it's not like he's just going to lose everything and the rookie balled out and is going to take his job. This is still going to be Damian Harris's job going forward, but I'm a little bit worried because who did we see I guess you can call it reemergence from? It was James White, 61 yards on just 10 touches, and we've seen them turn to him in the past, and he's produced. Sure, that was with Tom Brady just a few years ago, but he understands this offense, he knows what he's doing, and he makes very few mistakes. Does he start to get an uptick in volume, and do they penalize Damian Harris a little bit? I hope not. Bill, do not screw this up, Bill. Don't punish the kid. He's playing great football. He's continued to play. Bill, damn it, Bill. Don't you do it. Don't you dare take Damian Harris away from us. So as of right now, this is what we're going to do. In a matchup going up against the Jets, who were just torched by Christian McCaffrey. It's Christian McCaffrey, right? I get that. But with the potential of some increased volume going the way of James White, I think he enters flex territory if needed. That's going to depend on a lot of things and who your other options are. For this week, though, I'm starting Damian Harris and I'm starting James White. I think they both see enough volume to be viable this week. Do they have huge ceilings? I think they eat into each other's production a little bit. However, the floors, they should be pretty safe. For the Jets, no, on all of them. Got a lot of running backs back there, and they ain't running nowhere when they get the ball. Tevin Coleman, he doesn't look that great. He looks slow. We got Michael Carter, who's not going to see a whole lot of volume. You got LaMichael Pirine. You got Ty Johnson. I mean, everything as a whole, no. And now they're going up against New England, which isn't a horrible matchup, but it's not an easy one either. With all these backs splitting touches, it's a huge mess. Plus, Zach Wilson is there to throw the ball down the field to Corey Davis is what it looks like, and he's doing dang good at it. So I'm just going to go ahead and sit everybody in New York. Niners and Eagles now, and it's week 2 of fantasy football, right? And Raheem Mostert is already hurt. I know you're not surprised. I wasn't surprised either, but now it seems like it's the Elijah Mitchell show, at least for right this second. He actually beat out Trey Sermon here throughout camp, which surprised a lot of people. However, when the guy got his opportunity to play in the game here this past week, he did not disappoint. 19 carries for 104 yards, found the end zone once. It's basically pretty simple to figure out in San Francisco. Whoever gets the bulk of the touches in the backfield of the San Francisco 49ers is going to succeed in fantasy football. It's the way that the offense is built and how they utilize these guys and their running attack. It doesn't matter who the name is. It's just who's getting the volume. The biggest issue in the past is the volume's been split up between 2 or 3 different guys. Right now, they're somewhat limited. Do they activate Trey Sermon? Possibly, but you got to remember, just this past week, you had Elijah Mitchell and JaMychal Hasty both active with no Trey Sermon, so that pretty much means he's third on the depth chart, even with Raheem Mostert out. That is somewhat worrisome, and we said it all offseason, right? We like Trey Sermon a lot, but he's going to be more of a second-half project. Wasn't going to be somebody to come out the gates and really dominate early in this running game. It's something to monitor here throughout. They're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles just manhandled the Atlanta Falcons on the ground. But it's the Atlanta Falcons, okay? The Atlanta Falcons offense is not as good as the San Francisco 49ers offense, so I'm not going to completely hold that against them here this week. I'm still going to start Elijah Mitchell only, though, for this week going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. For Philly, yes, and yes. Way to commit to Miles Sanders. I love seeing it. 19 touches this past week, and I'm going to make direct eye contact here for a second. If Miles Sanders gets 19 touches a game and plays right around 15 games this year, he's going to finish top 12, and you got yourself an absolute steal in your fantasy football draft, hoping that they can continue to commit to him. Love what he can do in this offense with Jalen Hurts. They want to move the ball on the ground, right? Jalen Hurts is not a quarterback that's going to throw 50 times a game. He's just not, and that's okay because the offense looks better that way when he's not having to force balls down the field. What else did we see, though? We also saw that Kenneth Gainwell is the clear number 2 here in this backfield. Is he ready to start just yet? No, but the potential is going to be there for him to kind of be like a Naheem Hines type role moving forward where he could see some pretty decent volume, maybe even a James White who we kind of talked about earlier. That could be Kenneth Gainwell here in the next couple of weeks, so he's definitely something we're keeping our eye on. But don't forget, this matchup here against San Francisco this week, San Francisco just gave up 41 fantasy points to the Detroit Lions, the running backs. The San Francisco 49ers gave up 41 fantasy points to the running backs only of the Detroit Lions. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start Miles Sanders this week and hope that this commitment to his volume stays the same all year long because he could put up some huge numbers. On to the Raiders and Steelers, and how surprising were the Raiders this past week, right? I mean, at times they didn't look good, right? At times it looked like that offensive line couldn't even stop a fart from getting through. And then all of a sudden, as the game progressed, the defense, really the pass rush, Max Crosby, started to boost the confidence overall of the Raiders, and the entire team started playing better. Now they get a matchup here this week going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we really need to get Najee Harris going for the Steelers. Is this the game that we can get him going? Well, the matchup is better for him this week than it was last week against Buffalo. We saw at times Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray, Lamar Jackson find some big holes to run through. Now, I expect that to happen here once again for Najee Harris and the Pittsburgh Steelers because Ben does have those weapons on the outside. If he can find more consistency to Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson or Juju across the middle, it's really going to open things up. Is there going to be a lot of running room? Probably not a lot, but they need to be able to capitalize on the ones that they actually get. And Najee Harris should have himself a decent day, not a smash start, where he's going to go out there and absolutely kill it, but going to remain a star. We're not giving up on Najee just yet. For the Raiders, it's hard, right? Because the offensive line isn't great. They're making a lot of mistakes. Josh Jacobs, the word is already coming out that he's dealing with some type of turf toe injury. How does that limit him? He did score a couple times. Wasn't getting a ton of volume, wasn't overly efficient with the touches that he got, kind of similar to what we've seen in the past from Josh Jacobs. I mean, a lot of the same. Not bad. We've loved Josh Jacobs. We just didn't know what Kenyon Drake was going to do. Kenyon Drake being just more of a passing option, which they need because they're trying to force every target, it looks like, towards Darren Waller. So Kenyon Drake should be more of an option in the passing game. But how does this turf toe injury limit Josh Jacobs? That's something we need to pay close attention to. If Jacobs plays and he's good to go by the weekend, he's going to be a start. Kenyon Drake's going to be a sit. If for any reason that we do not have Josh Jacobs this week, I'll start Kenyon Drake for that pass catching upside in a matchup going up against the Steelers, who we saw Devin Singletary look pretty good against this past week. I'll start Kenyon Drake if Josh Jacobs were to sit. It's just got to be something that we got to pay attention to here throughout the week. On to New Orleans and Carolina. This is going to be our Manscaped matchup of the week. Don't forget, after this video is over, fellas, head over to manscaped.com. Find some products for yourself. I'm going to give you a discount for the love of God. If you use the promo code HEADLINERS at checkout, we're going to give you 20% off and free shipping. It's not just ball trimmers, even though the ball trimmers are amazing. There's tons of other products there for you to choose from, so don't miss out on this great offer. But back to the game, Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. Totally looking forward to this matchup, right? No question. They're both automatic starts. It's the same old Christian McCaffrey, right? As long as he's healthy in the lineup, he's going to score you 20-plus points a game. Doesn't really matter who he plays. This past week, 30 touches, 187 total yards. Didn't find the end zone, but huge numbers once again for Christian McCaffrey. Now, the New Orleans defense shut down Green Bay. But is that a Green Bay issue or a New Orleans defense problem? Regardless, you don't ever sit Christian McCaffrey. Same goes for Kamara, right? 23 touches, 91 total yards, a touchdown. He's splitting touches with Tony Jones Jr., but that's okay because he's always split touches in this backfield and still finds a way to produce on a weekly basis. Plus, they barely use Taysom Hill, which is music to my ears because Taysom Hill under center is bad things for Alvin Kamara. Without Taysom, it only continues to boost the floor for Kamara on a weekly basis. Both these guys, automatic starts. Denver and Jacksonville, and what a mess for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I spoke months ago, as soon as free agency started, when Carlos Hyde went to Jacksonville with Urban Meyer, I said, be careful. They got that Ohio State connection. I'm not going to be surprised if he's utilized. And then they lost Travis Etienne, who they drafted early. And then James Robinson was just primed to have a huge role once again with Carlos Hyde backing him up. The one thing that I did not expect is for Carlos Hyde to out-touch James Robinson 11-8. This past week. I don't understand. I don't know why they don't like James Robinson. I guess Urban Meyer's just trying to be a little bit too cute there. He's committed to Carlos Hyde. He knows more about Carlos Hyde. He just doesn't want to get to know James Robinson. Whatever it is. It's just not a good thing here for Jacksonville, and there's going to be a committee here moving forward. They fell behind early, couldn't really rely on the running game. That's going to be a problem on a weekly basis, and that was all against Houston. That was against the Texans, one of the worst teams in all of the NFL, and the Jags made them look like a Super Bowl contender. That's how bad things are in Jacksonville. Plus, you already have rumors coming out that Urban Meyer's heart just isn't in it, and he may want to go back to college after week 1. Just things aren't looking good in Jacksonville, and now they get a matchup going up against the Denver Broncos, who are way better than the Houston Texans. I have a feeling that Trevor Lawrence is going to turn into the 2020 version of Joe Burrow, where he's out there throwing 50 times a game because they're trailing, and he's having to do it all himself. Until we get more clarity in this backfield, I don't want any part of it. I'm going to sit James Robinson and Carlos Hyde here this week against Denver. As for Denver, I expected more Melvin Gordon early in the season, and then a transition to Javonte Williams as the season progressed. What I didn't see is here in week 1, Javonte Williams actually out-touching Melvin Gordon 15-14, but fortunately Melvin Gordon was saved by that long 70-yard touchdown run and really gave him the better overall day. But now they get a matchup against Jacksonville, who allowed 33 fantasy points this past week to the Houston Texans running backs alone. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but with Jerry Jeudy out and going to miss some time, I think they rely a little bit more on these running backs at times throughout the game, especially in a game like this in which I see them getting a lead. I don't think it's crazy to start either one of these guys. This week, they're both flex plays this week for me. They're not smash starts with huge ceilings, but the floors and the volume could be pretty safe for both of these guys and enough to cross that 10-point threshold for me to make them a start. Minnesota and Arizona now, and how good did Arizona look last week? I mean, that defense is nasty. Okay, let me rephrase that. That pass rush is nasty. Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt are not messing around, and it is going to be a nightmare for opposing running backs and quarterbacks going up against the Arizona Cardinals here this season. They just allowed only 60 yards to Derrick Henry. And now, in back-to-back weeks, they're going to get Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook, obviously, an electric talent. But I'm going over to Prize Picks, and I'm smashing the under this week on Dalvin Cook because it's set at 90.5 rushing yards alone. No passing yards included, and I don't think that they can get to 90 rushing yards. So I'm going to smash the under there on Prize Picks for Dalvin Cook. However, he still will be a start. You can't ever sit your stud. He's a healthy stud. You start him. What about on the Arizona side? Now, a lot of people for Arizona out there they want to scream about Chase Edmonds being the number one guy. Chase Edmonds is the number one. You guys like James Conner. James Conner sucks. Well, this past week, James Conner had 16 touches, Chase Edmonds has 17. So you can tell there's a role for both of these guys in this offense. Neither one of them is going to be a bell cow role. Now, going up against Minnesota, they just gave up over 150 yards rushing to the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, both of these guys, in my opinion, will remain flex plays. When you have somebody that's getting that type of volume on a weekly basis in a high-powered offense, the likelihood for them to cross that 10-point threshold is very likely on a weekly basis. Now, James Conner, yes, a little bit more touchdown dependent, but that's okay. You drafted the guy in like the 9th or the 10th round. You shouldn't be overly reliant on James Conner. James Conner is an injury fill-in, a future bye week fill-in. I don't have any other. I got a Saquon Barkley. Can I throw in James Conner? Honestly, this week I feel a little bit safer starting James Conner over Saquon Barkley. There's just different decisions throughout the year that you make those choices. James Conner is not a weekly must start by any means, but he does have value and he does have a role in Arizona. Got them both here in the start column for week 2. On to Atlanta and Tampa Bay, and this game just screams, hell nah. I don't want any part of this, I don't think. I mean, Atlanta's offense just looks bad. They can't get the ball to Kyle Pitts. They can't get it to Calvin Ridley. Mike Davis has nowhere to run. And now they get a matchup against one of the best defenses in football, at least one of the best defensive fronts in Tampa Bay. No, I don't want to rush out Mike Davis this week. I really don't. I don't want any part of this game or this offense really until they can figure it out. Sure, you're kind of stuck with Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley, but I feel safer with them than trying to find a running lane for Mike Davis to run through against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going to be a sit. As for the Bucs, what a mess, right? Ronald Jones, is he in trouble still? I mean, he fumbled yet again, and then he barely even saw the field. Leonard Fournette had a pass bounce out of his hand. I mean, there's just so many mistakes, and it's not a good thing for this backfield. Does this mean we start seeing more Gio Bernard? Is Gio Bernard somebody that we see as a lot more volume? Is he worth a start? Probably not. If I had to start one, it's still going to be Leonard Fournette because he's the one not in the doghouse the most that could see early down work and goal line work on an offense that should have scoring opportunities. So if I had to start one, it would be Leonard Fournette. He's the only guy that I'll put in the start column because Ronald Jones, can't trust him. Gio Bernard, need to see an actual role out of him before I want to throw him in my starting lineup as well. Overall, though, this backfield, just a mess. Cowboys and Chargers, and the Zeke panic is in full effect, right? Everybody out there trying to panic sell Zeke Elliott. I'm not panicking after 1 week, which was a difficult matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm just not that worried yet. This is a slightly better matchup for him going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, plus Michael Gallup is out, so maybe he gets a little bit more action earlier in the game, in the passing game. I'm not worried entirely about Zeke Elliott yet. He's going to remain a start. As for the Chargers, the biggest concern for me with the Chargers is only one target went to a running back in last week's game, and it wasn't even Austin Eckler. Now, Eckler still had 15 carries and the goal line work. Don't forget that. Austin Eckler was the guy that scored his touchdown from the goal line. That's something that is a positive moving forward. Larry Roundtree was involved, but not somebody who we're going to start anytime soon in fantasy football. The Dallas D looked pretty decent last week, though. They were very improved from what a lot of people had expected from them, but Austin Eckler and his ability to catch passes may just be more of a game plan type style that they used last week where they didn't need him to do that. They may need him to do that here this week against that defensive front of Dallas. I'm going to start Austin Eckler once again. Titans and Seahawks, and pretty clear here, right? Another 2 starts for Chris Carson and Derrick Henry. Yeah, a little bit of a disappointing day for Derrick Henry last week against Arizona, but that defense for Arizona looked great. I'm not worried about Derrick Henry. The volume will be there. They're not going to have to play catch up every single week. And plus, we know the touchdowns are a-coming for Derrick Henry. For Seattle, still clearly the backfield of Chris Carson. Rashad Penny, he's already banged up, going to miss some time. Carson is a mainstay on the field, right? We know he's going to be out there. We know he's going to be involved. It's a slightly easier matchup this week for him going up against Tennessee than it was for Indianapolis last week. Plus, Russ is cooking down the field, right? Tyler Lockett deep, DK Metcalf deep down the field, opening things up for Chris Carson. Going to be a start for me once again in week 2. Chiefs in Baltimore now, and to start off the week 1 game, Tyson Williams looked really good, right? He was explosive. He looked quick out there on the field, great in the passing game, really fun to watch. But then as the game progressed, he started to miss blitz pickups. His pass protection of Lamar Jackson was not great, really whiffed on a block to end the game there where Lamar fumbled. That's not going to keep you on the field in the NFL. Not with them signing all these veteran running backs. And as the game progressed, you started to see more and more and more Latavius Murray. And going forward, you're going to continue to see more and more and more Latavius Murray. As of right now, he is the guy in this backfield to start. Both Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman, they weren't even active this past week. They won't get the start this week. Latavius Murray, his job going forward is in the backfield of the Baltimore Ravens. Not going to say that Tyson Williams has no value, but now he's going to be a little bit more touchdown dependent because the volume may swing the way of Latavius Murray, and he's going to not get that 15 touches a week like we would like him to get. He's going to be more big play, more touchdown dependent, but somebody to keep an eye on. Don't drop Tyson Williams yet. Don't drop him yet. Hold on to him. As for the Kansas City Chiefs, yeah, sure, we're going to still start Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 17 touches to only 1 for Darrell Williams, so it's clearly CEH's backfield. It was a difficult matchup last week for him against the Browns. Don't forget that whatsoever. Now going up against Baltimore, we saw Baltimore be a little bit more vulnerable in shorter runs, not so much big chunk plays, still an overall solid defense, but we know the pass catching upside is there for CEH, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finds the end zone this week as well. I'm going to continue to put him right there in the start column. Which leads us to Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. And let me just start this one off by saying the Detroit Lions are a bunch of damn liars, right? Because basically we saw no DeAndre Swift for weeks, and then he was injured, doubtful to play, and then all of a sudden, magically midweek, he was good to go. And then reports came out that he wasn't even going to start, that Jamal Williams was going to carry the bigger load. And then DeAndre Swift goes out and basically plays fine. Now, sure, the bulk of his fantasy points came on one big passing play, 100%, but he wasn't as injured as they were saying that he was. The Detroit running backs last week saw 20 targets between the two of them, between Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift getting 11 of them. So that's definitely something to pay attention to going forward. This team isn't stacked with receiving weapons down the field. They're going to continue to utilize their pass-catching running backs, but can you start both of them going up against the Green Bay Packers? The Packers didn't look great at all, right? Do the Packers improve? I think the Packers improve against the Lions for sure. But I don't see huge gains from both of these guys, and we can't start both Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. I don't see that high ceiling on a weekly basis. I'm going to take the guy who's more explosive with the touchdown upside more on a weekly basis. I'll start DeAndre Swift here this week and sit Jamal Williams. For the Packers side of things, you can't sit Aaron Jones. Sure, you're disappointed by last week's performance. A lot of people were disappointed by last week's performance, but how do you get back on track? You get back on track with a matchup against the Detroit Lions, and that's what I'm hoping for here this week and starting Aaron Jones once again. All right, those are the starts and sits for the running back position here, week 2 fantasy football. Just a reminder, head over to Prize Picks, get that account set up, use that referral code Headliner so we can match your deposit up to $100 and get you entered into that huge giveaway for the Justin Jefferson jersey, the Manscaped Perfect Package, and the Trevor Lawrence card. Looking forward to giving that away, and you still got time. It's going to be the entire month of September, so sign up now before it's too late. But hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. Looking forward to some football. If you have questions, comments, leave them down below. We try to do our best to be as active as we possibly can within this community, and looking forward to talking with a few of you guys about some running backs here in week 2 fantasy football. Hit that like button, consider subscribing if you're not, and we'll talk to you later.